Okay, we're live now. It will take a few minutes and we'll be starting. The webinar starts shortly in 5 minutes. For those of you that just joined, we are live now and we'll be starting in a few minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, we're starting at 4 p.m. sharp. Make yourselves comfortable, grab your cup of tea, coffee, or anything you drink. Get ready to enjoy the next 45 minutes with us. Once again, for those who just joined, we're starting at 4 p.m. sharp. We have 2 minutes. One more minute. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now starting. Greetings and a warm welcome to all of you. We're thrilled to have you join us today. So we gather to discuss new efficient ways to teach modern writing in the advantage of digital age we live in. My name is Zeynep Bukovian. I'm part of the European School Advisory Team here at Constructor. I will be your moderator for this webinar. Today, we're taking a look into how personalized learning can add value to your teaching. We'll form a discussion around the challenges when instructing math and writing. We will talk about the ways our brain functions and see how individualized multisensory learning can add value to the acquisition of the basic math, reading, and writing skills. The webinar session will last for 45 minutes. We will start with a presentation, then we will have a demo of our applications, and we will end with a Q&A session. Please, for the Q&A session, I gladly ask you to write your questions in the chat section on YouTube. We will try to answer all your questions as quick as possible, and we will try to do that live. Now it's time to present you to our speaker, EdTech enthusiast, passionate enabler of learning success, and co-founder of our learning programs, Christian Vogeli. As part of Christian's master's project, Christian developed a prototype for a multisensory learning software to help children acquire the basic spelling and writing skills. This actually was a personal project for his university professor's dyslexic son. He worked with a team of neuroscientists from the University of Zurich to test the solution, which was scientifically proven to help children with and without learning difficulties. Along with 16 years of research in AI, he successfully turned Grafari Orthograph into the market leader for children with dyslexia in Switzerland. With the belief that every child has the right to learn, to dream, and to seize opportunities, Christian has dedicated the last 20 years to develop efficient tools that enable each child to unlock its full potential. And the main goal today is to provide this opportunity to as many kids across the globe as possible. Now, it's time to hear personally from Christian. Christian, please, the scene is yours.
Thank you, Zainab, for this very kind introduction. And I'm really glad to do this webinar with you today, because it's really my passion that we want to enable all the children to obtain their reading, writing, and math skills, and not as a purpose on its own, but really so that each child gains access to education and can unlock its full potential. That is the ultimate goal, that everybody has access to education and can fulfill his or her dreams. Now, as I already took you through most of the agenda, we look at challenges, we look at those individualized multisensory learning tools that we offer, and then I will also tell you or explain a little bit how the usage of them is implemented at schools now and therapists, etc., in and around Switzerland and Europe at large. So before concluding, then I will also look at what digital tools have to offer to be added value. Now, to start, schools are challenged by a myriad of things at the moment. That is just a summary of some of the problems that schools face all around the globe. These are research results and papers from different countries. For example, missing teachers is a problem around the globe. There's 12,000 teachers missing in Germany. There is 163,000 teachers in the United States that are underqualified for the position they're in. There is declining student performance also connected to the COVID and the pandemic loss. There's a high teacher turnover, there's migration, there's a change of leading media, etc. Also, inclusion, which we look at today, is of course a big benefit for many kids, but it also puts a lot of stress on the educational system. So we are faced with a myriad of challenges. For today, let's focus on math and writing, because that's the topic of today's webinar. And let's focus on why math and writing are special. And they're special because they're cultural techniques. And cultural techniques such as reading, writing, and math, by everyday use, they're automated by the brain, or at least sub-functions of these skills are automated by the brain. And I'll make an example on the next slide what automation means. And the special thing is, for the brain to automate, it has to realize that it's worth automating. It's a lazy organ. It only automates what is considered to be worth it. And the consequence for learning is that you have to practice regularly, you have to practice consistently, and you have to address those brain areas which actually automate these functions of reading, writing, and math. And for children with learning difficulties, regular and consistent alone is not enough. This has a special importance for kids with difficulties, and that's what I will elaborate on also. So very generally, what does automation of skills mean? It means, for example, that you as experienced readers and writers, you can read this text, although it's quite jumbled up. But if you imagine a child at the beginning of the reading and writing learning process, the child will start, oh, that doesn't make any sense, and will stop reading. But you read in so-called word shapes and can process a text like this because you have automated the reading and writing. Also in math, there are many skills that are automated. If I ask you which of these two spheres, or these two groups has more circles, your brain will immediately decide that on the right-hand side, there are more. It's 57 to 24. But if you think about how does your brain decide this, I guess that would be difficult for you to explain. You just look at the circles and somehow you know. So telling quantities apart, if they're large enough, is automated. Also, if I ask you what's 7 plus 5, yes, some might calculate. Some might say 7 plus 3 is 10, 5 minus 3 is 2, 10 plus 2 is 12. Some might do that, but most, I say, would just know it's 12. If I ask you what's 11 times 10, I say 11, and I guess most of you immediately see 1 if I say 11. So immediately you convert from a word to a graphical representation, and then you probably solve the task by graphically adding the 0 to it. So all of this is automated for you as experienced readers, writers, and math performers. And that's the goal in basically what we do, but in particular, in general, also for math and spelling training or writing training, that all learners automate these basic skills and sub-functionalities. And then also that we offer specific support for children with learning difficulties, because as I mentioned before, just training regularly and consistently is not enough. What is the neuronal development, the mechanism behind this automation? You see here a brain of a child at the beginning of learning how to do math. And what you can observe is a lot of frontal activity. The frontal brain areas are our most powerful brain areas with respect to reasoning, to inference, to logical thinking. We use these areas for all new tasks. You see this left hemisphere have a lot of frontal activity from the top, a lot of frontal activity for these math tasks, and right hemisphere also a lot of frontal activity for a child to do these math tasks. Now, an adult solves the exactly same tasks with way more parietal activity. This means that the brain shifted processing of these tasks from the frontal brain areas to these parietal areas towards the back, and automated these tasks. This is called the functional specialization for tasks that we ask our brain to perform regularly and often. The advantage of this specialization is that the tasks themselves require less effort and are solved more quickly. Just if you compare, there's a lot of activity in this child's brain, and a lot less activity in this adult brain for exactly the same task. So the tasks require less effort and are solved more quickly. This is generally part of the brain's plasticity that some of you probably have heard before. So the capability of the brain to adapt to frequent tasks. And this frequent means it needs 100 to thousands of repetitions for the brain to realize that it's actually frequent. And what you should not confuse this with is learning by heart or memorizing. Memorizing or learning by heart is really remembering facts. This is a mechanism where the brain changes its behavior, its processes to work more optimally for the tasks we ask it to perform. There are a couple of characteristics of these functional specializations that have to be considered when teaching reading, writing, and math. On the one hand, it has to be a high frequency training because the brain needs to recognize the importance. As I said, it's a lazy organ. It only automates if it really realizes it's worth automating. You have to train consistently. because the brain has to realize that it's always the same. You should provide immediate feedback because the brain shifts attention to the next task within 200 milliseconds. You should train in short but regular units, regular to get to the frequency, because the brain tires after 15 to 20 minutes. So this process of learning, this process of function specialization stops working after about 15 to 20 minutes of training. So you have to have those short but regular units. You should, and that's really important, you should avoid anxiety, because in anxiety, the brain produces a lot of adrenaline, and that blocks all these learning processes. If possible, you should provide multisensory learning to the brain, because it always learns and strengthens its functionality by associating, by connecting. And finally, you have to keep in mind that this is a gradual development. It's a gradual shift from frontal activity to parietal processes. You can speed this development up, but you cannot jump over some elements of this parietal shift. So ultimately, there are no shortcuts in training these basic skills. And depending on what you have as your background, whether it's maybe dyslexia therapy or also math teacher, you probably know a few classical examples. For example, in reading, writing, you have to acquire the phonological awareness before working with orthographic rules. That's been known for almost 40 years by now. You cannot jump over phonological awareness. Or in math, you must be able to relate quantities to each other before you can calculate. That's also a model that's about 15 years of age already. So you cannot jump over these steps. If you try to jump over some of these steps, you'll get this, what I was told is also called Swiss cheese learning, but you have gaps in your basic fundamental, in your basic foundations, and you will never become a secure and convinced, safe, and skilled performer of math, reading, and writing. So the consequences of this is that you have to build a solid foundation, you have to avoid these gaps, and if necessary, you have to return to previous skills if needed. And this also requires you to assess and observe which skills are actually mastered, and also ask yourself if maybe skills that, were part of the curriculum a year ago or 2 years ago are actually mastered or not. It also means that every learner has to learn at its own speed and has to follow kind of a mastery learning concept that you can only advance to more difficult skills if you master the previous skills. And the biggest consequence of this is, of course, that you have to individualize the training, because only then can you fulfill all these requirements of an efficient math, reading, and writing training. If we return to the myriad of challenges that face us today at schools, I'll highlight the ones who are exactly, falling into this category or into these skills that cause challenges that cause the most problems. The increased diversity and heterogeneity makes it harder for you to individualize within a class. The declining student performance leads to those gaps that you actually cannot afford. And the migration makes it a lot harder. Also languages, different languages in your class make it a lot harder to provide consistent training. Inclusion makes it harder to provide feedback and have a regular training. And the pandemic learning loss also has these gaps as a consequence. And finally, one of the big problems that I mentioned before is the so-called tech clutter, that up to 300 apps are used per student between the age of 5 and 25, which is really a big problem with respect to consistency and consistent training. So these are three of the challenges that face us at school and are especially daunting with respect to math, reading, and writing. That was my first overview. Zainab, have there been any questions asked so far about what I presented?
Thank you, Christian, for your presentation. Yes, we have received several questions through our social media channels. And one of it is we spent quite a lot of time discussing how the brain actually functions. And here we have a question: how long is it taking the brain to automate a process, be it a math acquisition or language skill?
Yes, it depends, of course, how frequently you practice. For example, in reading and writing, if you do normal practice, normal intensity at schools, after maybe a year and a half of practice, you see those kids that become really fast readers, for example, and start automating, and those kids who fail to automate. So there it's about a year and a half till these automation processes really kick in. In math, it might be slightly faster, maybe after 6 months of specialized training, you see the first differentiations, but it's months actually for the brain to really automate.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have one more to go with.
Sure.
Shortly, I think it's a short one. We've been asked how teachers can actually, what characteristics should teachers look for when they're choosing digital tool that would help them while teaching?
Right. Actually, that's a question I'll answer directly on the next slide when I say how we can or how we should evaluate tools to really have added value from them. So I let me answer this with the next slide.
Thank you.
Thanks for the questions. Please keep asking them in social media if you have. Right. So exactly the question we just had. What should we look for in tools, and maybe against which criteria, I listed them here, can we evaluate tools? On the one hand, I mean, they have to be user-friendly and they have to motivate. I would actually not even say that's something that you can say we have or not. It's a must-have. They should also provide immediate feedback and allow the user to correct himself or herself. I think that's also a must-have. What you should have as educators, you should have coaching tools that allow you to see what the kids work on and also what difficulties they have. And there, you should ask yourself, is the information that I get from the coaching tools really actionable for me? Can I derive actions of what to do with a child based on these coaching tools? What the tools also should offer is adaptivity of the content, because you have to individualize. Every child has to learn or be able to learn at his or her own speed. And that's only possible through individualization. And there you should ask yourself, is this automatic individualization, or do I as an educator have to individualize and put together a curriculum for each child, a learning plan for each child? And if you have to do it yourself, it's still adaptive, it's still individualized, but it's a lot of work for you and possibly not manageable in a class of 22 or 25 students. So it has to be adaptive, and ideally it's automatic. And finally, a criteria for me is also that it's really insightful into the newest learning sciences, and also uses potentially methodologies that are only digitally possible. So you don't just have tools that convert a page into a PDF and upload this, but that you really look at whether the digital tools have a methodology, have an added value also in terms of the methodology that they provide. And finally, kind of a 5+1 criteria for me is that you check whether these tools are also evidence-based, whether there's actual evidence for these tools to be effective. So this would be my, on the one hand, answer to the question before, on the other hand, also just a general list of criteria for evaluating digital tools. Well, to go back to math and reading, writing in particular, and also how we try to comply with all these criteria in our applications, let's have a close look again at how math is automated. You see again, on the left-hand side, the untrained brain with a lot of frontal activity for doing for solving a math problem. And on the right-hand side, I highlighted the brain areas that automate most. For example, number words are automated in the left prefrontal cortex. In the visual cortex, we automate the Arabic numerals. And up here, we automate cardinality at number line. So in the example I made before, what's 11 times 10? You probably understood the 11 with this brain area. You probably saw the 1 with the visual cortex here. And this brain area up here probably gave you the feeling that, yes, 11 times 10 is roughly 10 times 10 is roughly 100. So 110 should be correct. So the brain specializes these areas for processing number word, cardinality, Arabic numerals, and also the number line. And this gives you what you could call fluency in math. And the problem is that without specific training, this development, this automation may be delayed by up to 5 years. And 6 years, sorry. And 6 years is really a lot of time in school. So you can imagine that a 15-year-old might only have as much automation, might only have as much support from his brain to perform a math task as a 9-year-old. In Calcularis, we try to overcome that by using all representations in all the tasks that Calcularis, our math tool, asks the child to solve. We also explicitly train the transcoding, so going from the spoken number word 11 to our Arabic representation and also to a quantity, we explicitly train the switching between representations. And then we also connect the representations through a novel number line, 3D number line as we call it, which I depict here on the left-hand side, which is connecting these different representations, cardinal, ordinal, number word, and Arabic numeral or Arabic representation with a presentation in between that has both cardinal aspects, ordinal aspects, but also decimal aspects. So for example, you can count the 10 blocks, it's 4 10 blocks, and it's 7 1 block, so you have a cardinal representation. It extends to the right, the larger the number gets, that's the ordinality in the 3D number line. And it also has a position information. The blue 10 blocks are at the back and the left, and the green 1 blocks are at the front and to the right, like in the decimal system. We have shown that this training actually triggers specialization. It was a 6-week training. And then again, after 6 months, we could actually measure this improved specialization of the brain. So also in this study published in 2011, we had this about 6 months delay till actually then afterwards, the automation was measurable with fMRI scans. We have this validated in several user studies that we did with Calcularis. And in these user studies, it was always a 3-month training period, and we measured how much the children improved in addition, number line, but also subtraction, and how they were able to reduce math anxiety. And I listed some results here that, for example, the kids were solving 29% more addition tasks correctly in the same time span as before after the 3 months training, or they solved number line tasks with an increased accuracy of 30%, plus 30%. They also significantly better performed in subtraction tasks, almost 50% more subtraction tasks were solved correctly after 3 months, which was a really big success for them. And we showed also a reduction in math anxiety. Calcularis has been in use for 10 years. I think we published it really in July 2013, if I remember correctly. So it's really validated in particular in Switzerland and the Netherlands, with more than 100,000 students who have used it over the years at more than 1,000 schools. And it's available in 14 languages, which shows also the interest around the globe to use Calcularis. So that's how we do multisensory learning with these college, etc. in Calcularis. And for reading and writing, we also looked at what the brain or how the brain automates sub-processes there. Again, similar presentation as before, the brain with an untrained brain with a lot of frontal activity to read and write, and then a specialized brain or specialized areas that in particularly specialize in phonological processes and in letter shape and word form recognition. And again, by automating these sub-skills, you gain fluency in reading and writing. Phonological awareness is crucial in early stages of reading, writing, and spelling acquisition. And unfortunately, some learners never automated, in particular, people or children with dyslexia. And the automation of functions of later stages is delayed too. So if you don't automate reading and writing back here, you will always use your frontal activity to do that, which will also slow you down, which also will lead, for example, to reduced understanding of text, because you don't have as much capacity in the frontal brain area for understanding the text or the significance of the text, because you also need frontal brain areas to do phonological processes or to recognize the letters and the word forms. So you have a double strain on your frontal brain areas, which will also, result in low performance in other subjects or other sub-skills than just phonological awareness and letter shape and word form recognition. So the goal, again, with multisensory learning in the orthograph applications or graphary orthograph, as I'll explain afterwards, is that we strengthen the link of the written and the spoken language, and thus support the phonological awareness by offering the brain to link phones to graphemes with multisensory cues. And we use colors, shapes, topologies, and structures as visual cues, and we use as auditory cues pitch, rhythm, and tone. And we're also, for graphary orthograph, able to show that we can strengthen the phoneme grapheme correspondence with orthograph, which is a key function or key specialization in the phoneme awareness. So with graphary orthograph, the older application, the one as Zainab explained at the beginning, we built actually for Adrian, my professor's son. We were able to show that the children also are capable of reducing the number of errors significantly by almost 32 or 33%, and they also have a more accurate phoneme grapheme matching afterwards. Orthograph has been used for more than 15 years, and thus also by slightly more students than calcularis. It's available in a bit less languages because there's a bigger translation and localization effort in reading and writing as opposed to math. Our newest addition to our applications is Graphary Phonics, which we just released last summer, which, well, as the name says, introduces children to phoneme grapheme mapping and phonics and graphemes. And so far, we validated this by user studies with pilots of more than 2,000 students, and we'll have the first statewide usage starting this summer in Switzerland. The studies are still outstanding, but we have them lined up, and we'll do one in Potsdam and Berlin and a large pilot in Bavaria towards the end of this year. So I explained quickly how these color shapes, etc., strengthen both the verbal in math, strengthen the processes of transcoding, and in language, strengthen the link to spoken language to written language. That's what you see at the front. And what we do at the back is a individualized learning, automatically with the help of machine intelligence. We quantify or qualify each of the skills and the tasks that we have as here yellow predecessor skills, blue basic requirement skills, and green extended requirement skills or tasks, whatever you want to call them. And then when, let's say, an average, I know average is a difficult term, but when an average student starts to learn, the system will start with basic requirement tasks. And if a child has no big problems, he will just be taken through these basic requirements, more or less, and will be led to the learning goals of the current block. If a child is highly gifted, the system will detect it, or just gifted, if it's no problem learning, the system will detect that and will automatically take the child through more of the extended requirement tasks before also guiding it to the learning goals of the current session. And if a child is struggling or might even have learning difficulties, the system is capable of automatically returning to predecessor skills, train maybe also tasks or skills from last year or the year before if necessary, so that each child also gets these predecessor skills, these foundations, again, and will then be taken on different paths to the learning goals of the current session or current block. So this happens automatically, and this is the reason why we can provide a solid foundation for all the learners, and through this independent training, which enables each learner to acquire the basic competencies, really get to the state where each child has solid foundations and is a strong performer of math or reading and writing. All of this is included in a powerful platform, which, for example, allows you to access all of the applications in one centralized login, so we have less tech clutter. It also offers elaborate coaching functionality for you as educators, where you see time and date, but you can also perform error analysis, and you will get practice recommendations of what you might also practice outside of the programs with your children. Well, that was my summary of the backgrounds of orthograph, Graphary Orthograph, Graphonics, and Calcularis. And before I do a demo of them, I wanted to ask again, Sign, about the questions that were asked.
Yes, thank you very much, Christian, for that presentation. It was really very helpful and valuable. We have some questions from the audience. The first one to go with is, how do you ensure transferability of skills gained from literacy and numeracy training so that they can work independently afterwards?
Ooh, I don't see, I quite understand the question, but what I can say is that, in all these studies, yes, we had the children practice on screen with the digital tools, but all the evaluation was done with paper pencil tests. So actually, we weren't just measuring the progress in the applications, we were really measuring the progress in school situations, doing this example of Calcularis, for example, a math test, where they had to solve on a piece of paper, as I said, tasks within 10 minutes, for example. So we at least know that this transfer works from digital training to paper pencil situations. I hope that was what the question was about.
Thank you very much for the answer. I hope we answered the question. I will go with one more before we actually step to the demo part. And there is a question: how do you ensure that children stay focused while training with your programs?
Well, I mean, there's always things that can distract children. Especially, I mentioned, I guess ADHD is one of the problems in inclusion. If a child is too distracted, there's an advantage that they're quite often more attracted to digital training than on paper training. So the media itself is an advantage there for keeping the children focused. But then, as I will show, there are also gamification elements in the applications, which also draw attraction and are motivation for a child to stay focused.
Thank you. Thank you, Christian. I believe we can step into the demo.
Cool. Sure. So to do the demo, I will first do a quick demo as a teacher, and then I will show a special feature, a simplified login for students. I put down the teacher user. You can also use this teacher user yourself afterwards, or in the coming days if you want to do that. So please, if you want to take note of this, you have to go to the URL golmer.com, and then you can log in with a user with the name demo teacher, capital D, capital T, and password again, demo teacher, capital D, capital T. I'm ready to do that. I already prepared this. So let me start this. You can see it's a centralized login for me. I have my teacher application, my coaching applications here at the top, and then, like the learners, I can also access Orthograph and Calcularis. As a teacher, this is also what the learners see if they have all our products licensed, for example. And if I start Calcularis, you will have also, as a teacher, kind of the student experience.
Welcome. Welcome to Calcularis. Through multiple games, you will first learn how numbers are represented,
32,
and where they are located on the number line.
So this is the multisensory learning I explained before.
You can also practice addition and subtraction. If you can do this with numbers up to 20, Calcularis will also test your multiplication and division. For all users, Calcularis starts with tasks for numbers ranging from 0 to 10. The better you are at completing the tasks, the faster Calcularis moves on to the number range 0 to 20, followed by 0 to 100, and eventually 0 to 1000. You cannot choose the number range yourself.
Well, let me stop here. That's the explanation. That's this individualized training I explained before, where the computer, with the help of machine intelligence, decides which paths you have to do.
Choose your guide. Your guide gives you tips when you click on the question mark in the game controls section.
That's part of the gamification, that you have your companion. And then when you start, you have the choice between what we call the guided training, where again, you have this automatic immunization, which is my preferred or my suggested way of using it, that you have this. But you can also go to the free training, where you can really go in and say, today I want to practice addition and subtraction in the number range to 20, and I want to practice addition with tens crossings. So you have the choice to directly select the skill you want to practice, but my preferred training is the guided training. So I'll continue here with the demo, where you just start.
In this game, you see two quantities represented
Everything
as
is
point
explained
clouds.
with
Quickly decide which
animations,
point
so you
cloud
can really
represents the
practice,
bigger number before the time
on
bar
your own.
runs out, and select the box with the...
And the system will just continue where I last left off as this teacher. And this is now, for example, a very basic task in the number processing. Oh, this is a difficult one. I think that was larger. In the number processing area, where I have to decide which quantity is actually the larger quantity.
Congratulations!
It's kind of one of the
That was
examples I
good.
made before in the presentation. Oh, that was
Good work.
And now if I manage this, you will see I will always get the presentation also on the number line. So we use all these quantities here.
5
we use the
apiece.
number line presentation, and we also use the Arabic representation in every task that we offer, that we do.
Practice makes permanent.
Now, since I have no difficulty, the system will go on by itself to the next task. If I do this quick, oh, that's a hard
Just
one again.
like that.
If I do this quickly enough, but you cannot choose the task. The system will decide when I'm proficient
In
enough.
this game, you have
which
to
I
identify...
seem to be now.
98.
I'm proficient enough, so it goes on to the next set of tasks, which is reading the number 98 and associating it with a quantity. So you just got this
62.
adaptation that it will
Good
go on
job.
its own if I don't make mistakes, and it will also return to previous tasks again if I start making mistakes. So that's basically the training. There is, as I showed you before, also addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And then you have the gamification elements. You have a shop where you can buy individual items for your screen, or we have an animal park where you can turn your diamonds and stars into animal park scenes, and you can buy animals and later also feed them. So this is the gamification element of it. And then you also have, as part of the gamification, your progress, that you can see how
The
you
mountain shows how
advance,
well you've worked.
or
The
the awards that you won while completing exercises. So that's
See you.
roughly how Calcularis works, and orthograph. I'll also do a quick impression of that. It's similarly organized.
This is orthograph. Get ready to learn. Welcome
So
to
you
orthograph.
again have introduction
With
of what to
orthograph,
do. You have to select
Choose your
your
guide.
companion.
Your guide can, for example,
And then again, you can select between the guided training and the free training. And if you do free training, which is again not what I would suggest, but you can do that. You can really go in and say, oh, today we are really starting with CVC words, for example. That's a typical organization of an English course. We're starting with CVC words, or maybe we work now on silent E's at the end of the word. So again, in the guided free training, you can select the exercise or the module you want to do. And in guided training, the system will start now, in this case, with the very first module, the very first exercise, because this teacher has not worked before. And then
the guided
you
training
again have
starts
each
with the game
exercise
assigning
explained
colors.
with animations.
In the game assigning colors, you learn which letter belongs to which color.
So this is, for example, that you learn that in our setting, an M is blue and an N is yellow. So you can also, if you don't quite hear whether the word is containing an M or an N, you can use the colors to tell M and N apart. Or you have D and B that have different colors, so you can tell them apart, or a C and a Z, which can make the same sound, can be told apart by the colors. So the multisensory learning, in this case, the colors, help you to more easily remember and associate the letter to the sound. So that was very quickly
See you next
a quick
time.
glimpse of the two applications and how they look as a student when you use them. I would like to finish the next 4 minutes with a couple of best practice examples and how these applications are used at schools or in schools. They are both used in schools as well as by therapists and parents. And in schools, they're especially useful in inclusive and special needs situations. And for therapists or also parents, they're good for home use. And in both cases, one really big strength is the rehabilitation that on the one hand allows internal differentiation in the classroom, allows the students to train on their own, but also make it easy because it's still in home use, because there's still time needed by therapists and parents to actually guide the children through the learning. One typical organization in inclusion is here from a school around Zurich, where they're organized that all the children of the classes, those with and without learning difficulties, use the applications. And all learners are given 1 or 2 time slots per week to train at schools. Ideally, this is done in open settings such as weekly plans or as part of after-school activities. And then the learners that have more need, maybe because they have learning difficulty, they are asked to do it once or twice at home per week. So this school differentiates between the intensity of the training between all children and those who have difficulties or have more need. And they also differentiate in the intensity of the coaching or the effort of the coaching of these children. The class teacher just checks working times with the coaching features. Maybe does it every 2 weeks, maybe also just has the report sent to him or her by email, doesn't even the coaching application, doesn't even open the coaching application, but just has the information from the email and just says, yes, you did your work, you didn't do your work. And then the special education needs teacher actually uses the coaching applications to really analyze the problems and maybe also in a one-on-one situation picks up on some of the issues that he or she detected with the coaching tools, and does that every 1 or 2 months. So this is an inclusive usage with all children. There is also a usage that has been considered for Indiana, where in Indiana, that's a state in the US, they usually do universal screening with all students. So what they do is they start with all students. Again, all students practice once or twice a week for 15 to 20 minutes, and the checking is just done by the teachers where they work, in particular if it's done as homework. Special education needs teachers are also reading specialists and not involved in the instruction for all students. But if a child is detected to be at risk after the universal screener, they practice once more per week, and also special education needs teachers start checking on their progress. And if really in a diagnosis, somebody is detected as being dyslexic or having a dyscalculia, learning difficulty in math, then training is again increased to 4 times per week. And in addition, also the authorized reading specialist works more intensively with the child, uses the coaching applications to analyze errors, and thus also has an increased counseling on the usage of the applications. But this also happens in school. And finally, there is this usage outside kind of schools, is in particular by therapists who usually, only have 1 lesson per week with a child. And then a possible process in this scenario is that the child practices 3 to 4 times per week at home for 15 to 20 minutes. And initially, like week 0 or day 1, is introduced to the therapist by the therapist to the application. They practice together for 20 minutes. And after 1 week, they do a control session, again, practice together. And the therapist or educator asks whether usage has worked at home, etc. But then the work is done alone by the child at home. And it's just an evaluation by the coach, like every 4 weeks, to see if the child still progresses or might have special errors or special difficulties. After 12 weeks, it's really also possible to take a break and maybe then add another 12-week training after a break of a month or 2. This is also an option if you have group setting, in your therapist, where you can split the group in half and work in one-on-one situations with half the group, while the other group works on the applications. And finally, I can do a simple math. You have like 12 hours of efficient individualized training with a minimum amount of introduction and evaluation as an educator. Well, as a conclusion of the presentation, I would like to remind you of those 5 criteria that I laid out before, that I think really to be added value applications need to be user-friendly, and they have to motivate. They have to provide immediate feedback. You might remember this is part of how the brain learns, by having immediate feedback. And it should allow, so it's a really independent training, allow error correction by the user. The coaching tools that you can use as educators should give you actionable information, so you can really have a one-on-one situation afterwards and also pick up a question or a problem from a child that surfaced during training. Content should be adaptive, ideally automatically done by the systems, like our systems are capable of doing, so you have a reduced workload. And ultimately, these methodologies that these applications use should really be methodologies that maybe only digital applications can offer, like, multisensory learning or animations to show the similarity, for example, of numbers and quantities. And please try to figure out whether the application has evidence-based and studies showing that it's really efficient. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation, my webinar. Sign up. I saw a couple of chats popping up. Are there questions that were asked and that we can try to answer in the next couple of minutes?
Yes, we have one more question that actually was asked, and it goes quite back at the very beginning of our presentation, Christian. Okay. How do those tools help to overcome teacher shortage?
Well, the teacher shortage will be there if you don't train more teachers. Teacher shortage will be there, but this individualization system that we have really allow the teachers to kind of spend less time on preparing lessons and lesson plans and learning plans for children. So they don't reduce the shortage in teachers, but they allow the teachers to use their time more efficiently by requiring less preparation time. So it's an indirect freeing up of teacher resources by automatic individualization.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Well, if there are no more questions, thank you very much for your attention. Have a great evening. And if you have any questions, please reach out to myself or also to Sign Up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.